Mr. Rokakis, it is such a pleasure to have you philosophize about something so worthy of your ruminations, but I'm tempted to ask you what is the most surprising thing you've learned through the land bank, but I'm not going to. You don't need that. You'll probably tell us anyway.
It's that not everybody supports it. We've run into some resistance, honestly. I just take a second to divert. We've run into, this is regionalism. And sometimes communities that are less afflicted by this problem of vacancies and foreclosures don't understand why they need to be part of the solution. But they do need to be part of the solution because every community in Northeast Ohio is affected by this crisis.
Here.
Including Pepper Pike, where you live.
No dispute. Instead, I'm going to ask you what may feel like a technical question, but it has an important implication. You're trying, when you're trying to avoid foreclosures, mostly you're trying to make things happen in the private market. The land bank steps in when the private process has failed, and you just are not getting a private solution. To make a private solution work in foreclosure prevention, you focused on getting some capacity to write down mortgage debt that should be written down.
As one of the arrows.
Well, I understand that's not the only thing, but I can imagine that one of the great frustrations for a homeowner trying to write down a mortgage is that the person who made the original loan is long gone. You've got some kind of mortgage processing company you deal with. I would think a law that required that there be a person accessible to a homeowner who has authority to write down that mortgage, an identified person. And if that isn't made available, then some kind of heavy-duty remedy kicks in. But create the channel through which the private parties could negotiate that principal balance down. With that, you might get a lot of balances written down on their own.
Part of why I said the most valuable tool that we have as face-to-face counseling is precisely for the reason you just mentioned. That when people attempt to navigate these troubled waters on their own, they get bounced from individual to individual to individual. The advice varies depending on who they're talking to on what day. And part of why the face-to-face counseling is critical is we have to have people that can take that individual, work with them, and bring them through the process and be their advocate. And I agree with you. Whether that's a federal law or a state law, my sense it'd be a federal law. I looked at the foreclosure experts in the room. But my sense is that if you could do that, but you still have a problem, and that is that there is these trusts, these mortgage trusts that ensure that run these large pools of mortgages, and many of them are guaranteed by agreements that limit the percentage of mortgages that can be, in effect, written down or reduced in value. At least that's what we've heard, but I've seen documentation that tells me that's actually the case. So it's a very, very complicated picture. And I just hope that over the course of the next year, we can get the mortgage industry, banks to come back in again. By the way, it's going to be more losses. I mean, we're talking about significant losses. And a solution that writes down principal balances, I think, is going to involve the U.S. taxpayer again, I think. I don't know that, but my sense is it's not going to happen without a struggle.
Thank you. Treasurer Rokakis, just two questions really and points. With regards to the vast amount of properties that the land bank will be getting in, one of my great concerns since taking office the last term was regarding just the sheer volume that we're dealing with vacant abandoned properties, but also then the categorization of not just the worst of the worst for demos, which the city's been focused on, but also the better or best locations, and even most importantly, or partly important to historic districts and communities that you once served, is the historic architectural values of some of these properties as well, and kind of a focused approach on trying to identify and really make sure that we save those historically valued properties. That's one. And the second point was that there's a lot of talk on the street with constituents about the abilities to gain access to purchase properties. You mentioned your three categories of large, small, and then residential. But there's also questions that come with that in terms of transparency and accountability and communications about the fairness of someone to gain access to properties that the land bank has. And I know it's just begun, but if you could just speak to that a bit in terms of the abilities for individuals to gain access.
Let's do the historic properties question first. I know we have Kathleen Crowther here and Mr. Jorgensen from the Living Restoration Society. And we talk about the three categories of property, those that need to be demolished, those that need to be preserved and sold. Clearly, historic properties fall in categories 2 and 3. If we're going to spend any money on preservation, we're going to find a house that has good bones, has historic value. I'm fairly certain, I can speak for the land bank staff, that they're not going to move to demo that property. So I think you need to rest assured they're sensitive to historic properties. And I don't know how formal our relationship is yet with Kathleen. We probably should, you should talk to Gus. He's right there, Kathleen. And Dennis Roberts is right behind you. And Councilman Cummins, I know this transparency because I read those ridiculous blogs because I have no life at 3 in the morning. And I've read the comments. We're not even out of the water yet, and there's already the claims about backroom dealing and lack of transparency. Trust me when I tell you, there'll be so many properties out there available to the public. Look, if there's an adjoining property owner that wants to come in and perhaps take that property and expand their yard, clearly they're going to be in a better position than somebody who lives in another city. If there is a person that wants to come in and rehab the house and move into it, I think I can speak for staff. They will have a special status. But I don't know what else to tell you. I think we've done everything above board. It's been a tough time to be in government where I'm at, but it's also tough to be where they're at because this fallout, this lack of trust in all these processes has certainly worked its way over the land bank. I can tell you some stories. People, disgruntled job seekers, people have been angry, threatening us that they haven't got what they wanted, and it's just too bad. I've been in politics, as you met. I was 22 years old, and I was elected back in 1977, my senior year at Oberlin College. It is a different world today. When I got elected, it was 2 newspapers, 3 TV stations, and a couple of radio stations, down to 1 newspaper, struggling newspaper, and this world of internet journalists. If I told you how much time I've spent having to call people who host blogs and saying, if you don't get that done, I'm going to sue you, it's a no-win proposition. It's too bad. It discourages a lot of good people from getting into politics and staying in politics. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a Friday Forum featuring Cuyahoga County Treasurer Jim Rokakis. Thank you, Mr. Rokakis. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.
For information on upcoming speakers or for podcasts of the City Club, go to cityclub.org.